friends, it's Iain from RTO here, and welcome to Tuesday, which is St George's Day, hence what I've got my England rugby top on, celebrating St George's Day. And today we have got part 2 of the Tangerine Dream story, and we've moved on to the 1980s. Now the 1980s was a big period for electronic music, with people like Jean-Michel Jarre, who Edgar Furrows actually collaborated with back in 2015 on the Time Machine album of Jarre's. Also Vangelis was adapting the digital technology, so they'd sort of moved on a little bit from their beginnings. And during the 1980s, Tangerine put out 10 studio albums. Yes, they had other stuff as well, but we'll concentrate that on another day. So, coming in at number 10, now this was the 10th album of the decade, and actually their 19th in all, and it is Lily on the Beach. Now, one of the tracks was first appearance of Jerome Furrows, which is the son of Edgar. So Edgar's on here, Paul Hassing, it's on here as well, Jerome's on here doing guitar, and Hubert Wallander does sax. So the first track on this one is called Too Hot for My Chinchilla. I love Jerome's guitar work on this. It's got that very 80s sequencing on it. It's okay, not too bad. Lily on the Beach, quirky little track this is, very 80s, but it's got some really quirky little keyboard bits on it. Alaskan Summer, it's a little short track, 3 minutes long, gone are the 20-minute epics. Lovely little bits of synthy going on here. It's quite a good melody. Desert Drive, it's just a mixture of patterns and things. It's okay. Mount Shasta, very eerie. I love the tones on this. It's very Vangelis as well, which he was doing this sort of thing at the time as well. Crystal Curfew is now some lovely guitar on this. You got a bit of that 80s cheesy synth, but it is the 80s, of course. Paradise Cove comes next. It's okay. It's not one of my favourites. 29 Palms is my favourite track off this album. I love the piano at the beginning of this. It's sort of lots of little things going on in the background. Pretty good track. Valley of the Kings comes next. Quirky again. I like the little keyboard stabs that come in and out of this track. Then we have Radio City, which features Jerome on the guitar, but it's a little bit too commercial for them. I think I know what they were trying to do, but I mean the guitar works great, but it's very radio friendly. Blue Mango Cafe again was trying to be poppy and trying to get in the charts for Tangerine Dream, and it just doesn't suit them, unfortunately. And then we have Gecko, that's alright, not too bad. And Long Island Sunset, the last track, second favourite track on here. I love the saxophone on it, always gives it a little bit more variety. This isn't a bad album. It's got, obviously there is plenty of sort of 80s tones on it because it was the 80s still. So I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 5 out of 10. Okay, then coming in at number 9. Now this is the 8th album of the decade. It's their 13th major release and 17th studio, their 30th major release and their 17th studio album. It came out in 1987. So it's Edgar, Christopher Frank, Paul Haldingler and Jocelyn B. Smith on the vocals on Tyger, London and Smile. So the first track is Tyger It's one of them very rare times when you've got vocals on a Tangerine Dream song. I quite like this. It's a great vocal from Jocelyn. It's just quite good. I quite like that. London, again, very interesting vocal. It's quite a quirky little track. Alchemy of the Heart comes next. I love this. It's my favourite track. I just love the harpsichord sound on this. I love that sound. And then it turns into this very sultry sort of track. Really good track. Smile, not a fan of this. Vocals are not that brilliant. Yes, as we've got 2 long tracks on here, that's the last track on there. It's not a bad album. It's got some nice sounds on it. I do like London and Alchemy, pretty good. So I shall give this one an RTO ranking of 6 out of 10. Okay, coming in at number 8. This is from 1985. It's the 14th studio album overall and the 6th from the 80s, and it's called Le Parc. All the tracks are named after parks. So we've got Christopher Frank, Edgar Ferros and Johannes Schmeling on here. Claire Torrey of Dark Side of the Moon fame on vocals on Yellowstone Park. Kaja Brunes on Zen Garden. Robert Castor on trumpets. Christian Gestenter on programming and Stefan Harmon on programming. So the first track is called Bois de Boulogne, Paris. Wonderful piece this is. I love the trumpets in this. Really gives it a little bit of zing. Really makes a difference. Central Park, New York. It's a short thing. Lovely percussion on this. The tones of the keyboards are really good on that one. I do like that one. Gaudi Park, Gul Garden in Barcelona. Not too bad. I just love there's some really nice swells in this one. Really is good. Tiergarten Berlin, my favourite on this. I like the sequencing in the piano. Just sort of works so well. You wouldn't thought that sequencing and piano would work. It does on here. Then we got Zen Garden, Kyoto. Really good vocal on this. It's got that, definitely got that Japanese feel to it. Really nice song. Le Parc, LA Street Hawk. Nothing wrong with this one. Some nice keyboard tones on that as well. Quirky little bits. Then we have Hyde Park, London, my second favourite track on here. Some really interesting tones on the keyboard. It sort of swells. Really is interesting track. Then we have the Cliffs of Sydney. Sydney. This sounds like one of from their soundtracks. They did plenty of soundtracks in this period. I don't know if this was left over from the soundtrack, but it's got that soundtrack feel to it. It's dramatic. It's silent. It's really good. Good track. And the last one is Yellowstone Park, Rocky Mountains. Second favourite. Yet Claire Torrey's little vocal bit is wonderful. It's a great track to end the album. Not a bad album, to be quite honest. Highlights of Zen Garden, Yellowstone Park and Tiergarten. Very good little album. So I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 6.5. Okay then, coming in at number 7. This is an album that actually works 57 in the UK album chart. The third of their 8 is their 12th studio, and it's called White Eagle. So it's Edgar, Christopher and Johannes. First track on here is called Mojave Plan. This is very keeping in with the 70s piece. This is a long piece. It's 20 minutes long. Really good. It's got that eeriness that you expect from a Tangerine Dream song. Then there's a little bit in the middle that's sort of lingers. It just keeps repeating itself, and then all of a sudden it disappears. There's about 5 minutes that I don't ring with, but then it picks up and it starts going in a different direction. So that's just that middle bit. Take the 5 minutes off and it would even be better, but I don't understand what that bit in the middle was doing, to be quite honest. So that took up one side, and then we have Midnight in Tahula. Yes, you can tell it's 1982. Lots of synthesizer sounds, and then very premature drum machines. I think it's quite nostalgic, this one. Bit dated, but it's good. Convention of the 24th. My favourite piece on here. There's a little bit of sax. The sequencing's good. And it's that drumming, although it sounds so basic and very 80s, it absolutely works in here. It just really adds to the track. It gives it that sort of newish feel to it. Then the last track, White Eagle, another good track. Some lovely tones on the keyboards. Lots of little in and outs bits as well. On the whole, this is a really good album. I've really enjoyed this one. So I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 6.6. Okay then, coming up at number 6 from 1988. It's that 18th album overall. And it's their 9th of the 80s. And it's called Optical Race. So we've got Edgar on here and Paul, and joining them on here is Ralph Wave Paul. First track is Marrakesh. Now you'd expect it to have a bit of that Eastern sort of mystique because it's called Marrakesh. No, it wasn't what I was expecting, but it's good. It's got a lot of that sequencing sound that really was the electronica of the 80s. I like that. It's really good. Atlas Eyes comes next. Some nice choral synth on this. I love choral synth. Really, really good. Twin Soul Tribe. It's okay. A little bit disjointed. It seems like it's 2 tracks sort of been put together by a couple of hammer and nails and just thrown out there. It sort of is a bit different. Optical Race. Not a fan of this. It's just too... I don't know what they were trying to do with that. It just doesn't work for me on that. It's just sort of poppy, dancey, yeah, plastic a little bit. Cat Scan, like this one. Lovely soothing tones on the keyboards. Really is good. Sungate, second favourite track on here. This has got 3 sort of separate keyboard pieces that actually don't seem to be connected if you listen carefully, but put them together they just make this really nice tune. Turning Off the Wheel, my favourite piece on here. Even though it's got an 80s cheesy sound to it, I think it's just a guilty pleasure track for me on this album. I just think it's so good. It's fun, and that's one thing about it, you've got to have fun. Midnight Trail, it's got more that choral sort of Jean-Michel Jarre was experimenting with this sort of sound as well on the Zuluk album. It's really good. And then we got Gazelle, really different track this is. One of my favourites on here. It's got a bassy synth on it, and I think that's really good. I love a deep, bouncy, sort of bassy sounding synth. Really good. Great track to end the album. A pretty solid album from Tangerine Dream. Very good listen, so I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 7 out of 10. Okay, coming in at number 5 from 1981, the second album of the 80s. Their 16th major release and their 11th studio album, Exit. So this is back to Edgar, Christopher and Johan. First first track is called Q Mission. Do like the beginning of this. It's dramatic, and then some lovely little tones coming onto this. Good little track. It's 9 minutes long, really solid. But my favourite one on here is Pilots of the Purple Twilight. What a track this is. There's some lovely sequencing on this, and it just builds up. Little pips and pops here. Very well constructed song. Then we have Tarosen. It's got that primitive drum machine on it, but it absolutely works. You know, they were new at the time, and Tangerine Dream were exploiting them to their best. The keyboard work on this is fantastic. Then we have the title track, Exit. I do like the start of this. The keyboard is really swells around, and it keeps coming in and out. It's like a high-pitched whistle. It sort of starts deep and comes up and goes back down. Really, really strong little track. Then we have Network 23. I love the robotic voice at the beginning. Very sci-fi. Another good track. The percussion is just outstanding. You get these little tinkly blips all over the place. Just adds to the thing. Then we have Remote Viewing. I think this is too long. 8 minutes. It's just very repetitive. It's the sort of weak track of the album for me. Apart from that last track, it's a pretty solid album. It's got some interesting listen. I quite like this obscurity stuff. So I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 7.5. Okay, coming in at number 4. 1986. 16th studio album, the 7th of the 80s, and it's called Underwater Sunlight. So we've got Edgar on synthesizers as usual. Christopher Frank's on here. Paul Haslingner. Programming is done by Christian Gacenta. So the first track is called Song of the Whale Part 1 from Dawn. Love this. It has got that real undernautical water feel to it, and they're trying to put the sound of the whale in there. It is really nice. Very, very good. Then we get Song for the Whale Part 2 to Dusk. Again, it just continues on. The watery sounds. It's a nice piece of music. Again, they're trying to create this whale song. Very, very good. Them two pieces are fantastic. Song of the Whale. Then we have Dolphin Dance. Very sort of 80s track. Reminds me a little bit the beat they've got on this. If you remember Joe Jackson's Stepping Out, it's got that dumba 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 sort of sound. Really, really good. I like that track. Ride on the Ray. Really good song. It's got some great guitar work on here done by Edgar. It really is nice. Then we have my favourite track on here, Scuba Scuba. I like this. It sort of captures what you see when you're doing scuba diving. Now, I've been fortunate in my younger days to have gone scuba diving off the coast of Corfu, and you're watching the fish, and it just I think they've tried to create that what it's like to go scuba diving, and I think if you haven't been, you can't connect to it, but I really can connect to that, because I keep remembering bits of my scuba diving and seeing what I was seeing. It really works. It's a super little song. Then we have the last track, Underwater Twilight. It's okay. It's a little bit distorted and dysfunctional in places. It doesn't seem to if it should work, but it actually does. It's the weakest track on the album, but it's got its moments. So this one, it's got some great stuff. It's got that very nautical theme to it. I really enjoy this album, so I'm going to give it an RTO ranking of 7.8. Okay, number 3. Now this is where people say it shouldn't be here because it wasn't recorded in the 80s, and it is The Green Desert. It's the 15th album overall, and it was the 6th release of 1986, but this was actually recorded in Berlin in 1973, where in a period where Peter Baumann was temporarily left Germany to tour Nepal and India. Never released at the time. It landed when Tangerine Dream landed a deal with Virgin. They heard the tapes and remixed the version and was released in 1986. So it's just Edgar Furrows and Christopher Frank. First track on here is the brilliant Green Desert. Oh, what a track this is. Tell it's definitely written in 1973, but they've just added little bits to it and brought it out in 86. The guitar in this is just fantastic. One of my favourite pieces of music by Tangerine Dream, without a doubt. Then we have White Clouds. I just wonder what the original mix sounded like, because the drum beat certainly has been added because it's very 80s. But I don't think it fits. It's one of them tracks, it's sort of got the sounds of the 70s throwing at, like you've heard when people do remixes of their songs and they put that horrible drum beat. This is it. It just doesn't work. I'd love to hear what it sounded like originally. Astral Voyager, another brilliant piece of music. But this is where the sequencing bit works better than on White Clouds. It actually fits. Good track. Indian Summer, a lovely moody sort of late summer sound, sort of peaceful. Some lovely keyboards on this. Terrific track. It's a great way to end the album. After waiting 13 years to be released, was it worth it? Of course it was. It's a great album. Dump the horrible 80s drum from White Clouds, and it'll be better. There's little bits on here that they didn't need to add. I think they should have just put it out as it was instead of remixing. But this was the 80s where they had to have everything smooth and perfect. But it's still a great album, and I'm going to give it an RTO ranking of 8 out of 10. Okay, coming in at number 2. The first one of the 80s, released in 1980, 10th album overall, and it's called Tangram. So we're back to Edgar, Christopher and Johan. So this is just 2 tracks. Tangram Set 1 and Tangram Set 2. So Set 1. Love the delicate start to this. Them little bit of keyboards that keep coming in and out. And then after about 5 minutes, you got this sort of phasey sort of thing that you more associate with Jean-Michel Jarre and what he was doing at the time. I love that part. Then the sequencing sound fades in and out again, and you get this daunting keyboard that ends the part 1. But the best part is Set 2. Okay, it starts very similar to Set 1, and then you've got to listen to this under the headphones, because the middle bit sounds like an electronic guitar. It really grabs you in. It's daunting, it's eerie. Then in come the choral vocals. Oh, it just lifts it to another level. It's very creepy and dark, this part, but it's really good under the headphones. It's my favourite bit, and I love how it just fades away. Fantastic album. I love listening to this. You know, it's late 70s sort of mindset using 80s technology of the time. It's a great album, so I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 8.2. But my favourite album from the 1980s from Tangerine Dream is their 4th one of the decade. It got into the UK charts at number 45, 19th overall, and it's Hyperborea. I think that's how you pronounce it. So it is Edgar, Christopher and Johans, the stable 80s lineup. So the first track on here is a 9-minute thing called No Man's Land. I love this. It's got some sort of bendy guitar sound. I don't know if it's on the guitar or a keyboard, but it just sounds absolutely brilliant. It's just something different. I do like that. Hyperborea, the title track, brilliant track. The gentle sort of drum machine in the background adds the atmosphere and ambience of this track. It's got that water feel to it as well. Excellent track. Cinnamon Road comes next. I like this. It is sort of got that Mystique East part about the Cinnamon Road, spice trade and all that. It's got that sort of thing. So a great piece of quirky and emotional piece of music. Sphinx Lightning, my favourite track on here. It's the only track on side 2. It's that dramatic start, the harpsichord sounding keyboards, some short stabs on the keyboards come in, the drum picks it up and builds it up. The middle bit's got these sort of phaser sequencing. It's really good, and then it goes more gentle again. Eerie noises, sound effects. Just like in Prague, you get all these whispery voices, and then it builds up into that finale like in a Prague song. And then it just goes into nothing. What I like about this track, it's like a prog track, but done on synthesizers and programming. And that's why I like it. It's a fantastic track. This is a brilliant album, embracing new technology, still with their old sound. It's a Sphinx Lightning is just brilliant, and this is why it's my number one, purely on this one piece of music. So I shall give this an RTO ranking of 8.3. So there we are, a dive into the 80s Tangerine Dream. Now there's going to be people say you've missed this, you've missed that. It's very hard to put in something together of Tangerine Dream, where it fits, where it fits. So if I have missed anything, I do apologise, but this is such a huge catalogue. I haven't done any of the soundtracks because I'm doing all the soundtracks together. So that's why we haven't got the soundtrack albums in the sort of decades. Okay, next week we move on to the 90s, which is where they did change quite radically in my books. Not particularly one of my favourite periods of Tangerine Dream, I must admit. Okay, what have we got next? We've got retro ranking, and we're going to do a bad songs ones. And I'm going to have a go at finding. I found some bad songs by Marillion, one of my favourite bands, but we all can't be perfect. So join me for that later. Bye for now.